when we got our first technical performance results, that the recycled ceramic material that we have developed is actually 35% stronger than conventional ceramics. So that means it is actually performing better as well. It's not just saving the environment and the energy.
We would start with your inspiration story. How from being a person of interest in materials started off his journey into education, and then initially taking off that interest to a larger scale for a greater good.
Sure. So just to give you a heads up, it's going to be a bit long because it
Yeah.
starts from my school days, actually, which I didn't realize back then. So naturally, I don't know, somehow I was just inclined towards not wasting resources. So I remember during my school days as well, I used to, whenever I used to cross any corridor and I used to see any tube lights or fans being on in an empty classroom, I used to enter that and switch off all the switches. And my friends or batchmates used to, if they used to spot me doing that, they used to say, how does it matter? The school is paying the electricity bill, so why are you bothering about it? And I don't know how that idea came to me at such a young age, but I used to respond by saying, it doesn't matter. The electricity of the country is still going waste. And if we keep wasting it like that, the school will eventually increase our fees to pay the bills. So why should we waste? So now I find it funny. I don't know how I got those ideas during that days. But yeah, so that was how it began. And then just as an individual, I was very much interested into a lot of crafts. I explored a lot of materials back then as well as a school student. I did a lot of work with paper as an art form and then a few other things. So then I wanted to take it up ahead as a career itself. I didn't want to do work separately and something that interests me separately. I wanted to do something that interests me and turn it into a career. So then I pursued animation for my bachelor's. And even in animation, I was not very interested into the digital aspects of it, even though I did it, but I was more interested into the tangible aspects of materials. So I specialize in stop motion animation, where we make these miniature sets of different materials, move them frame by frame, and then make animation out of it. So that was pretty fun. I could actually explore my passion of exploring different materials and actually turning it into something commercial, not just making art forms. And then during those 4 years, I also worked on a lot of self-initiated projects. Most of them were product development, but unfortunately, I could work mostly with paper. Of course, that was my go-to material, and I did not work so much in a workshop as such, but mostly at home. So one regret I had always is that because I'm working with paper, it did not offer so much durability, even if I made the most detailed product. So I could not use what I made, and it just ended up as a prototype, which I was not very happy with. And then after convocation, I used to freelance in the advertising industry in Mumbai. And then there I observed that was a major turning point, that we invested so much in these different materials to make elaborate sets. We invested so much time. And after the shoot was over, probably after a few days or a few hours, the whole set was discarded most often. And I realized two reasons because of this. One, because the industry is so rich, they can just afford to discard it. Doesn't matter. And the second is the shooting floor is so busy, it's booked back to back, that nobody really has time to think about it. And somehow I realized I was not very comfortable with that situation. And that was a time where I was exploring to pursue masters as well. So then I thought, okay, let's explore something with ceramics, because I figured out that with ceramics, one good part is that once you get to understand the fundamentals, you can work at any scale, whether at an individual studio level or at an industry. The process more or less remains the same. So, and then it was a good part that I could actually make something by hand, glaze it and fire it, and it was a ready to use product. So that's how I fortunately got into the course as well at NID. And then when I entered the course, I realized that all of us are doing the same assignments year after year. My seniors did the same thing. I will do the same thing. My juniors will do the same thing. So how do I, as an individual, add value to the whole ecosystem or the industry? And somehow I had this idea that I didn't want to make my own version of the existing product. That's what we do as designers. I will make my own mug. I will make my own whatever table or chair. And most often it doesn't really add so much value, to be honest. So then I kept questioning this. And then at some point of time, we visited Khurja, which is a major ceramic production hub, as our industrial visit. And there we saw these heaps of production rejects that were just thrown on the roadside. It was not even, hidden somewhere or landfilled, just thrown on the roadside outside the factories. And that was my epiphany moment to realize that archaeology is actually based on this fact that ceramics don't biodegrade for centuries. And the waste that these industries are coming up with, it's going to be there for a very long time. And that's a huge amount of waste. So then next year, when I had to pursue my graduation project, I thought I'll take this up as my self-initiated project. And that's how my actual journey began with EarthTatva as a graduation project, as a student project, to figure out how we can use this waste and turn it into a material so that we can keep making new things out of it rather than mining new virgin material. So yeah, that was the gist of it, how I got into this.
And so many times, the waste that we actually see the waste is because no one has actually put down efforts to understand if that can be a resource. So how did you started experimenting the whole idea of what that was on a scale?
It was a self-initiated student project and a graduation project. The institute supported me a lot. I could use their machineries, the studio space, some basic raw materials, and then I collaborated with a couple of ceramic studios in Ahmedabad, and they were also very supportive. They extended a lot of help in terms of using their infrastructure, sharing their expertise on the material, or even maybe sharing their contacts whom I can speak to. And that is how we all of us together came up with this. I might be just the face of it or the catalyst for this, but there are a lot many people who actually supported this, and then this is becoming a reality now.
You know, majority of us, including myself, would never look at like ceramics as a way to contribute in an sustainability or eco-friendliness, because many of us don't even have perception that ceramic is a waste or an harmful thing in the first place. Like, so I wanted to understand, like, how does that impact the environment, and how did you see that as a effective thing to start this entire circular cycle?
True. So that was the first myth that I came across, is that we innately consider ceramic or especially terracotta as a very eco-friendly thing because we feel it's clay, it's natural. But we don't realize that to turn clay into ceramics, it takes a lot of energy, because clay, until and unless it is fired, it can be reused again and again by dissolving it in water. But once you fire it, it is irreversible reaction because the molecular water evaporates from the material and nothing can be done about it. So it's actually very harmful to the environment if we are using terracotta for a single time use, especially that we are doing these days with cullards.
Oh, okay, okay.
And yeah, so
Okay.
ceramic as a material, after it's fired, it does not harm environment. It's an inert waste. It does not interact with the environment. It's very inert. But the making process is very energy intensive.
And also there is mining done to
Yeah.
get the core
Most of
resource.
it is topsoil, which is also depleting at a rapid stage.
Got it.
Once you figured out that okay, this is going to be a thing, then how did you started validating the idea? Let's say you came up with a material, you made something new. Then how did you test it? How did you figure out the feasibility of that material, and that it can be a real thing, like it actually helps the sustainability of a material in general?
I think I would consider this as a very fortunate and thoughtful process that I took it up as a student project, because otherwise it would have been a very difficult journey. Even for it's already very challenging, but it would have been more difficult. But because I was a student, what I could, and it was a student project, so I could actually just experiment with a lot of things, even if it didn't work out. It was not a commercial liability for me back then. So what I did was, so I'll give you a basic background as well. First, during my secondary research, I realized that in Japan they had already done this because they have a very deep culture of using ceramics. So in 1998 itself, they started using post-consumer ceramic waste to recycle, and they were using 20% of recycled content, which they got a very good response from their consumer market. And by 2004 or 5, they were able to use 50% of recycled content in their composition. Of course, it was a pilot with 8 to 9 industries, but that was also good. And so that became my benchmark to use at least 50% of recycled content in the material that we are making, because it's already achieved, we should not go below it. That was the benchmark. And second thing is, since day one, I had this idea that we should be able to reuse this waste for multiple production cycles. Otherwise, to be honest, theoretically, it's very easy to make any recycled product. You just need some kind of dry waste, get some kind of binder, mix it together, give it shape, it's a recycled product. But most often what happens with us is that we end up using either cement or resin as a binder. Both of them are not as great a material. Cement, we know, consumes a lot of resources, and resin is also a kind of plastic, a variant of it. And if not of good quality, it will actually leach out in the environment. And if we use these binders, what happens at the end of life of these recycled products? Because the binder and the dry waste cannot be separated. So eventually it ends up in a. So the thought was to be able to reuse multiple times. And it's funny that I was in the department for so long. Even then, it took me 3 months after starting project to figure out that we could use clay itself as a natural binder, because clay after fire becomes ceramics. So essentially, we are working with a mono material when we are using clay as a binder for ceramic waste. So that ways we can keep recycling this for multiple cycles without degrading its quality. And then to answer your question, I did a lot of tests in the institute itself with different recycled material compositions and a lot of different processes as well. So there are different forming methods, whether it's casting or press molding and a lot of other things, 4 to 5 of them, and none of them worked. Fortunately, the slip casting worked, where we turn the clay into a liquid castable material and then cast it into plastic molds. Then what happened is we made a few prototypes, and fortunately, just the day when we got the prototypes out, we had a makers fair in the NID Gandhinagar campus. So that was the opportunity that I took up and had a pop-up stall there, and it was just a display. I was not selling anything because I just had a 5 or 6 pieces there just to display. And I could actually gauge the response of people there, of how people were reacting. And then I put these samples out later on when I had enough pieces to put out in actual flea market in Ahmedabad. And that was the time when I was actually interacting with non-designers and just gauging what the response was. Because in fact, to be honest, in the very beginning, I was very skeptical if people would even understand if this was a problem. Because when we go to the market, people don't even call it ceramics. People say ki kaach ka bartan do. So I was not even sure if they would recognize it, that this is a problem or this a material like that exists. But people were very responsive about it, and they were very happy that we were making tableware out of it. Because if we see around us, most of the recycled materials are being molded into bricks these days. So that's the first thing that anybody makes, which is a very basic cuboid. Of course, there are a lot of good shapes as well coming up in terms of forms for architectural applications. And I understand that architectural application is a direct, short way where we can put a huge amount of waste to a productive use. But my point was that I want to make something that can raise awareness among consumers directly. And tableware is one such product that in the ceramic sector that the end users choose to buy themselves. If we make tiles, it goes through a lot of people who's going to pitch to the end users, and they might not do that if they don't align with our purpose or we don't give them enough margins to sell. So that's a big challenge. Sanitary ware, of course, nobody talks about them, and it's a big challenge and a complicated product to make. So tableware becomes a very easy product to make, as well as it becomes a talk trigger on dinner tables. We like to tell people like, why did we buy this? Where did we buy it from? That's how we want to start conversations about people being conscious about what they buy. So that's why we chose tableware, and we had a good response about it.
Oh, nice.
2 things that I believe in. One is that we should have organic observations. That, I mean, we should keep observing throughout whatever experiences we are having, and there would be opportunities coming up. I'm not a very big fan of that process where we think, okay, now I want to do something, now I will find a loophole in the industry and then I'll find a solution. Right. So that's one thing. And second is, of course, done is better than perfect. Tableware is something that easy. I realize that with tableware may not have so much of environmental impact because it consumes so much less of the material rather than tiles in the architectural application. But done is better than perfect. At least we'll be out in the market. We can make recycled ceramics a commercial reality. People will get to know that it's a myth that ceramic is a eco-friendly thing. and then
that's
we can end up making anything, because our main offering is the raw material, the material composition. Once we get it out in the market, once people know, once there's enough demand, then we can just mold it to any shape. That it becomes very easy then, once people are accepting towards this, once we have the market created for it.
Mhm.
I find it personally very smart to kind of create awareness first and then like use the consumer power to scale to other prospects.
Also, one more thing, John, it's very important.
Yeah,
It's a big
please.
myth and a challenge as well to make a recycled product food safe, because that's what we see, right? Any recycled products is
Yeah,
an architectural product. You don't need food safety for it. But
yeah,
once you're able to make food safe, it's at the top.
that's
Then you
like,
can make
yeah,
any other product.
exactly, exactly. It's the highest standard, and then the other parts are
Yeah.
easier actually.
I read a lot of your stories, and before contacting you as well, I started reading about you in Forbes and Choice and organization where you received an award, then
The
GDS,
James Tyson Award.
yeah, James Tyson Award, as well as the GDS as well. So I just wanted to understand at what stage currently are you? Like, you started this out when you graduated. What Earth Tattva currently is associated in? Like, how many people are with you, and what are you currently doing in general as an enterprise?
So we during lockdown we had applied for a government grant, and I think because of the lockdown itself it took a very long time to get through, but it got approved for us. And in 2021 we built a team, we hired a team because we had the support of the grant, and then we started our commercial operations. But interestingly, we got a lot of challenges in fixing the material. So we were getting some cracks with the material. It was not behaving as we wanted to, and that always happens with a natural material.
Right.
And so that's why it took us a long time to actually launch. We haven't launched it. We are still at a pre-launch stage, but we have now figured out the material, and we are hoping to launch in the next month or two.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay. So, like, as in launch, like, what type of product
So
or
yeah, we are
material is
planning
our
to
users
do a
expecting?
D2C launch. We're
B2C
planning to
launch.
do a
Okay.
D2C launch on our own
Okay.
e-commerce website. It's going to be just two products for now, mugs and bowls, and in 6 different color variants.
So usually, like the products into environment friendly theme are like slightly costlier than their cheaper variants. So are those like still challenges for Earth Tattva?
Not really. So raw material wise or the processing wise, it's not expensive. It's actually at par, and we can make it
Okay.
cheaper as well. It's just a matter of scale, at what scale we are operating. But we are not positioning ourselves to be very cheap, because
Mhm.
again, during the research, we realized that if we make it very affordable and cheap, people don't respect the material because it's so affordable. If it breaks, it's
Mhm.
okay, we'll get a new one. That's not how we want it to be as of now. So we are placing it
Okay.
at a competitive rate with the branded products.
Okay.
So
Got
if you
it.
consider
Got it.
branded range of
Mhm.
products, it is in the same
Yeah.
range. It's not expensive. But if you
Yeah.
consider a roadside product, it is definitely expensive.
Right. No,
Mhm.
there is, I think, still a very huge market that falls under that consideration.
Yeah. And Shashank, you mentioned about reusability and recycling of the material that the Earth Tattva is producing. So, what is the process that goes into if you want to recycle Earth Tattva materials, like compared to ordinary ceramics? How does that whole process work in comparison?
So ordinary ceramics contains 100% virgin materials, which contains different kinds of clays and minerals, which are soluble or insoluble in water. Most of them are soluble. With Earth Tatva, we are using 60% of recycled content, 40% of virgin material, which acts as a binder. So of course, we have to pulverize the waste material to be able to use as a, casting material, because if the density is more, it won't suspend in water. So that's one thing. And otherwise, technically, to just give a few specs, which we were also very happy to receive when we got our first technical performance
Mhm.
results, that the recycled ceramic material that we have developed is actually 35% stronger than conventional ceramics.
Mhm.
So that
Right.
means it is actually performing better as well. It's not just saving the environment and the energy.
Right.
And of course, so yes, there are a couple of things that I had in mind that I consciously put in the process of the composition, and some were that came up over the period as a process. One thing was I wanted to be able to use this recycled material in a conventional ceramic manufacturing setup. Otherwise, what happens is even today we have a lot of green technologies in different sectors, but they need a huge upfront investment to be able to use that process. We need so much of infrastructure or a lot of other things. But this material we can just immediately start using in a conventional ceramic setup. That way, it becomes much affordable as an end product. And second thing is it uses lesser energy to fire as well. So if we consider a normal ceramic, it gets fired at a range of 1200 degrees Celsius or 1260 degrees Celsius, depending on which industry we are considering. But this material gets matured at 1180 degrees Celsius, which is a huge saving at that. Even if we consider 20 degrees, that's a huge saving at that high temperature. Because after 900 or 1000 degrees, for every 10 degrees, you have to spend more energy than you have to increase 100 degrees at a lower temperature. That's one thing. And second, with any material, to recycle it, we have to do a lot of processing. If it's metal, we have to scrape off all the paint. If it's plastic, we have to segregate it based on its density, and second, its colors. Otherwise, it just becomes black and it's just a lump of black material which has a very low commercial value. But with ceramics, we can just recycle all the colors together, and it will still give us a neutral color on which we can glaze it with any kind of colors and textures. So that way, it's very beneficial.
All right. And it is important that you mentioned this thing that, it was important for you to make sure that if we are doing recycling, we are using the current setup that the industry has. Otherwise, it's like building up new recycling industry itself.
Yeah, I think what helped is that I do not have a material science background. Because I'm a designer, I do not really have an in-depth background of how materials behave or how should I tweak the material. And so my point of view was not very high-tech. If I had access to those, such knowledge and technologies, I would have actually made it very complicated. Or maybe it would have performed better, but it would have been complicated. But because I didn't have so much resource reach and understanding, I tried to keep it simple, and it actually worked.
This is a beautiful outcome of multidisciplinary interactions. Like often the new insights come from some other sort of background. So I think that is amazing. Talking in terms of very layman things, like not having the expertise, when I hear like reusability or recycling, right? First question that comes is like, how many cycles can it like go on? Or people usually feel like that after 2 or 3 cycles of recycling, probably it will still end up as a waste.
Yeah. So to be honest, we haven't actually tried recycling it for even the second time because we don't have the infrastructure. Because right now we get the primary waste pulverized at the industry itself. So industry in India, if we consider the unorganized sector, they're already using it, but just 2 to 3% in their metal composition. And organized sector is using around 8 to 10%, whereas we are using 60% to begin with. So we don't crush it ourselves, we get it directly from the industries. And to get our own waste crushed, we at least need 25 tons at a time for them to even entertain us, because they don't want any external material to get mixed with their own supply chain. So that's why we honestly haven't tried it yet, but in theory it works because it's a single material. If it works now, it should work then as well.
Okay, got it. And right now, all the ceramic materials or the items we consume, right? Do they like directly go to like landfill, or is there any existing like structure that uses it?
Yeah. So just to clarify once, what we work with is a pre-consumer waste. It just direct rejects from the industries. It's not used at. And second, if we are talking about post-consumer waste, right now, unfortunately, majority of it just goes to waste, to landfill. To some extent, it might be given to construction sector to just add as aggregate in the concrete. Or I've also heard that it's given to road making processes where they use it as fillers, and then only on top they fill up with tar. But yeah, this is a very small example of what is happening right now.
And I can completely relate to this because my uncle, who is in Kalol, they have a big showroom for selling ceramic items. And once he said, Ketul, you wanna come with me to Morbi, and where a lot of bigger ceramic players in sanitary ware play around. And I remember talking to the production general guy, and he said, like at least 30% of what we produce gets into waste. Because even if it's a small broken part, they throw the whole piece away. There is no way to fix it, right? And that's a big problem, because ceramic in terms of handling is also a very fragile thing when you convert it to complex parts. And once those parts are to be used at home, especially in showcase or in your bathroom or in sanitary where even the small breakage is like discarding of complete set.
Again, talking about the positioning, yes, you're right about the small cracks. That is especially with sanitary ware products.
Right.
If it has a small cracks, it's just functionally non-useful. Of course, they might mend it with some fillers and then sell it in the local market at a much cheaper price. But that's why also we didn't get into it, because it's very tricky there. And with one crack, the whole 20 to 30 kg of the whole WC or whatever goes to waste.
Right.
While against that, because right now we are also just starting out, it's just understood that we will get a lot of waste because we are just beginning. So with tableware, we are generating lesser waste, at least with every piece that is not at par with the quality. And second, this is also something that we want to change as consumers, our perception of what is beautiful or what is, admirable in terms of its aesthetics, because we want everything to be the replica of each other, industrially made. And to get that quality, industries actually have to waste so many pieces, just considering tableware for now. So in tableware industry, there are a lot of pieces that are actually functionally good, but they are either warped, they get deformed in the process because clay has its memory. When it's a little soft, if you move it a little and you straighten it, after firing, it will go back to the deformed stage. So you get so many such pieces, and those are actually just readily landfilled because they don't cut our visual standard, even if functionally it's perfectly all right. So we will take out our products as they come, I mean, with the deformities, and we want to actually celebrate that, because that is the character of that material itself. Like each one of us, all of us are different. That is how each product is also going to be different. And as consumers, we really need to tweak our understanding of what trade-offs we really need to do. Are we okay wasting tons of materials just because it doesn't look the same as the previous product and it still serves this product, or we want to save the resources actually and then use products which have their own character?
Right. And one more thing that comes to my mind is, let's consider conventional ceramics in general and the EarthTatva material. Let's say we take it in two aspects: manufacturing aspect and a product aspect. Have you compared the carbon footprint of manufacturing and product in general?
So right now we don't have the quantitative number, because it's very challenging to figure out the difference, because in the existing market, each industry will have a different manufacturing process, different efficiency of their equipment and what scale they're doing. We use an electric furnace, they use a gas furnace, theirs is continuously running, ours is a batch process. So it will keep varying. We can just do it on temperature basis, but right now we haven't been able to do it. We are of course working with some organization who is helping out with us. Hopefully in a few months we'll have the numbers. But just to have a common comparison, see, it's a very transparent thing that if we have to pulverize such an abrasive material as ceramics, it's definitely going to consume a lot of energy. So in the initial pulverization part, it consumes more energy than the mining process, because mining, of course, depending on what kind of machinery we are using. But if in some places, if you go to villages, it's just manually done. So there's lesser footprint there and more footprint towards recycling. But when we do the firing process, it consumes less energy than the conventional material. And our main aim was to save the natural resources first. All these things can be taken care of. Like, to give you an example, as the solar energy industry is becoming better and it's maturing, in the future, it might actually happen that we can run the pulverizing machine and the firing process purely on solar energy. So it won't consume any fossil fuels at all. So that's of course a long run, but that's possible. So right now, to be comparing, pulverization takes more energy, firing takes less energy. So even if we don't have a quantitative analysis, it's still at par. Even if we are not a lower footprint, we are actually saving resources and we are not consuming more energy.
Correct. Correct.
That's a very realistic like kind of a picture, because now we get to actually understand the challenges that are there, like the industry level knowledge that a lot of people are not able to understand, how hard it is actually to get into a true sustainability.
Yeah, coming back to Earth Tatva. So, like you said, you are starting off with a pre-launch D2C model, right, where you'll be selling off on your own website. How is that the story reaches to everyone? Like,
So fortunately, we are out in the market in the news since past 3 years. So a lot of people already know about it and they are anticipating the launch of our products. So that's a good part. And again, like through these conversations through different platforms, we want to organically be out in the market and be talking about this and raising awareness about the material, the process, and of course our offering. So that's one part. And so the D2C is just a beginning, because as we are starting with a purely consumer product. So what our idea is, and of course right now the patent for our material composition has also been granted to us. So the idea is we want to put it out in the market under our name, so that, because it's not just about using the material as well, because any big brand can start using recycled ceramics, put it out in a huge scale and just talk about it. But it's not just about using the material, it's about how we articulate it and convey it to the consumers as well. So that's the messaging is also very important, and that's why we want to be flag bearers of it, and that's why we want to put it out in our under our label first, and then we will start doing B2B orders as well. And again, the challenge is that with B2B orders, they are very stringent in terms of their quality setup and of course the lead time and a lot of other parameters. So because it's very new for us in general as a material, not just about the business, but so we want to be sure that we are very comfortable with the material, the processes, how it behaves with different seasons, because it's clay, it's natural, so it will behave very differently in different seasons. So we want to understand what all problems can arise, and that's why we want to make for ourselves first, then offer it to different brands and other organizations. And the bigger picture is that because now we have the patent as well, we want to offer the license of using this material to existing ceramic manufacturers. And with that, we will be able to have a bigger impact at their scale. Because as a studio, how many pieces we are going to make? It's not hardly going to be any impact, right? So with that, the idea is we still don't know how to execute it. We have been thinking about it, figuring out different ways to do it for months now, but it's very difficult to crack these royalty-based licensing deals, especially in this sector, because I don't believe it has been done till now. So that is why license out the use of this material to existing manufacturers. They start making for their existing clients. We just keep getting royalty against that, and then we invest that time and energy and resources into making this material better. So that's the whole bigger picture. We don't want to just keep it to ourselves or just keep making ourselves. Neither we want to get into manufacturing, because that's not our forte. We want to focus on innovation.
right, right. Lately, I've started following you on SDGs that you want to focus on, and probably you talk a lot about SDGs in general. So how do you see Earth Tatva contributing to the SDG goals?
So directly, definitely, we are impacting SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production. That's our core thing. We want to focus on that first. And during fulfilling that SDG, we might contribute towards better employment opportunities and innovation and other SDGs that we have. But SDG 12 is something that we are just truly focusing on. And of course, as we grow, as we have more control over our processes, we have more funds to spend on. We would like to, have our water treated properly so that we are reusing our water, because it's a lot of water that is being used in our process. Right now, we are not able to do much about it, but once we are scaling up, once we have the funds to put in it, we will, of course, be working towards that as well.
Makes sense.
That's like all the pieces coming together, like the
And that's what
energy.
it works, right?
Yeah, exactly. True.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
we,
instead of spreading ourselves thin, we have to focus on one thing, do it really well. And then what I have actually experienced while working on this project over the years is that people come to you and they really want to help you with whatever their expertise is, and then we collaborate, and then it becomes a bigger impact together. So doing one thing right is more important than trying to do a lot of things.
Right. Then that makes a lot of sense as well. You know, even the same conversation we had with Shyam Sundarji, he said he started out with planting trees, and then there was a UK agency who came to him and said, "Can we help you in setting up drip irrigation?" You know, and that agency came in and they like put out pipes all over the mountains. You know, there are like 4 mountains where everywhere we go, there were pipes running out. So, and that's what the discussion we were having, that, you know, how did you make it so grand and so, you know, comprehensive in terms of involving all the stakeholders? And that's what he said. I just focused on one, that was planting out trees. And then miners came in, citizens came in, the government came in, the organization came in, the companies came in. And that's how the whole model now that we see looks beautiful.
I also like one important thing that you mentioned during your NID days is like as a student you experimented a lot, right? I think that's essentially a culture behavior a lot of our students are not doing, actually not using that. But that's the time, because once we get into industry, like the constraints will kind of sort of bog you down, like instead of expanding your imagination. So that's a very good time to play around and like kind of learn a lot of things. One of the initiative that Ketul did, I think the paper bag initiative they did, inspired one of their junior in mechanical engineering, who is now, after like 3 years, we met him after 3 4 years, and we could not even imagine he has his own recycling company, Reco Solution. That's why this entire inspiration sort of connects in final impact.
Yeah, that's great. And in fact, so as a set of students, or as a sub part of society, we need to have our students focused. I am not saying we have to be good at some kind of academics, but we should have some kind of focus as individuals. Because what I have been observing is that everybody is there. If it's a good institute, people are there for the name. If it's any other institute, people are just there for the degree or just want to finish assignments. They don't have the urge to actually do something, ask questions, or explore, or even collaborate. So one thing I understand that with industry, our opportunities of exploring might get restricted, but industry exposure is also very important. So what possibly we can do is that if somebody has a focus to actually take initiative and do something, they should collaborate with another student peer of theirs who has an industry experience through internship, and they can work together. That should be a great combination. And that's also through the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator program. I am just talking about during this series of SDGs that I want to make students aware about what SDGs are and want to make them motivated to incorporate as any kind of SDG, whatever they are interested in personally, to work towards that and incorporate that SDG in their academic project. Because the idea is that if they are involved in working on any kind of social innovation since their academic days, the hope is
Yeah,
that when they become professionals, they will also choose a profession which is having an impact in that sector. It doesn't matter if they are entrepreneurs or not.
yeah,
Employment is
yeah.
not a problem, but they should be focused on that, and they should be happy doing that. They should not be doing just for the paycheck at the end of the month.
Very
And the
well
SDGs provide
thought out.
actually a very good framework to think about things. You know, when you are starting out, like it gives a very, I think there are 178 pointers in the case, which talks about like every explaining every aspect of SDG in very much detail. Even if you pick out one and you started looking around your own area, you will find out a lot of things that you can do to create an impact on that particular thing. So
And see, most of these things are being done traditionally over centuries. Right now, these SDGs are organized and articulated well so that we can, think. Otherwise, it gets very overwhelming that there's so much to be done,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
nobody. How can I
true.
make any impact? But with
right.
this, at least get some focus and direction.
Right, right. Shashank, like around that topic, do you also like collaborate with interns, or like how do you have such collaborations with students? How
Yeah,
is it?
definitely. So right now we have two students from the technical ceramics background, where
Okay.
we are trying to optimize our clay material further and are developing another material for some other application right now.
Okay.
So that is something that
Great.
we are working.
That's great. That's great. I wanted to understand like how can general people kind of contribute to the mission apart from I think one of the major aspect would be buying the products and supporting the initiative, but are there any other ways that people who are like inclined towards sustainability can contribute to the mission?
So right now, I think it's just spreading awareness about the myths around the material itself, or maybe
Right,
even the
right.
benefits of it, or the possibility of it. Forget about the benefits, the possibilities. Because if I am working with ceramics, because I was in the background of ceramics and I thought of working in something like this,
Mhm.
somebody else could be in some other material, some other process and course, and they could find something like this, and they can actually feel that they can also make a difference, and there could be something much more bigger that can come up, which we are not able to imagine. So all these pointers that I mentioned earlier about no need to segregate it or it's 35%
Mhm.
stronger came about during the process. I did not imagine it while I was starting, but there was one
True.
point of focus. So maybe just having conversations about it and inspiring each other, motivating each other. That is something that can be done. So we actually create a community about like-minded people who want to really make an impact in different sectors. That is something I would like as an impact.
Great, great. That's something we are also very closely sort of associate ourselves as well. Like simply by knowing what other people can do, probably that's the starting point of lot of great things.
So, Shashank, like you said that you have started out in spreading awareness since long time. Like, have any brands or any big companies shown interest in the potentiality of this project? Like,
Lots of them. We haven't been able to cater to their needs because we couldn't operationalize the whole thing, and there were a lot of challenges with the material processing. But yeah, lots of them, lots of big companies, in fact.
Oh, nice. Because that is also one interesting area where it's important for them to be stakeholders of such mission, so
Hmm.
that the scale of the impact goes like much, 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 much higher.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Hmm.
And this
yeah,
should become a new normal then. And that's why,
exactly.
so again, as a designer, during my project, a lot of people actually suggested me to design a new form for whatever I am making, so that that form gets associated with recycled ceramic material. But I was very adamant that I didn't want to design a new shape for it, because that's not the whole point. The point is that the material is objectively meaningful for all of us, and it can be shaped into anything. Let's not restrict it to one particular kind of shape. And again, because it's tableware, it comes directly in contact with food, and so people might get apprehensive about using it. But if the shape is something that they are very comfortable with, since their association is with that form for a very long time, they might be comfortable to accepting that product more easily. So that's why our shape is going to be very simple, very universal, but what it offers, what it holds, is very meaningful for all of us.
Like as a designer, I could relate to this a lot. Like people just focus on too many other non-essential aspects instead of like trying to get to the core of it. Like a lot of it, the beautiful solutions actually are simple.
Yeah, so something that actually adds value to our lifestyle should not keep shouting that, see, look at me. It should just
Yeah,
gel into the life.
exactly. Exactly.
And so I always give this example to everyone whenever somebody suggests this to me, that let's look around us in our own home or workplace. What fancy thing do we really own? Yes, it looks really good to see, oh, it's really well made, but do we really buy that?
Yeah, true,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So the story that I wanted to
Mm.
share is that earlier, as a part of inspiration for this as well, because I always wanted to work on a material-based project rather than a shape or other things.
Mhm.
So as a child, I always did a lot of paper craft, and for that I used lots of Fevicol. And I don't know, since that age, I was very fascinated with the business model of Fevicol, because what is it? It's just a polymer. Most of it is water. once you design that composition and you keep selling it in bottles, and it empowers others to make such amazing things, whether it's craft, hobby things, or actual furniture. And that is what somehow subconsciously I tried to do with this material. It is a material which gives people so much of power to do things while having a lesser impact on the environment.
So it is basically the material that you have invented and not, the products that you are generating in day-to-day life, right?
Exactly.
So
Solving
that is brilliant.
core level. I
Yeah,
think
very exactly, like and very apt example as well, so
Also, it's not geographically limited. It's the same craze in every country. So many people from other countries have also approached us. So now we need to figure out how do we really offer solution to them and be also commercially viable.
yeah.
right.
So there have been a lot of questions posed to us that why are you even patenting this? But then we need to fulfill our bills as well, pay our bills. So I don't know how do we really cure it, because even if we make it open source, someone can actually misuse it. Let's see how do we really go about this. We can't.
Yeah.
I don't know. At least I couldn't keep it just out there, because knowledge is something that how we use it. Otherwise, it's just data.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize on the point that also it's important for everyone to understand that, what we have done over the past years, we have kept sustainability in a silo, something as a separate thing, detached from the economy, and that's why it is so hard for people to understand sustainability, that it's not something just that's just an environmental friendly thing, it has a very larger level of things to offer to us. Like you said, your material is stronger 35% than the traditional material. Now if you put it just as an environmental friendly material and label it like that, there is just going to be a conscious people who are interested in environment who's going to approach those things. But when you put it from a business perspective and put it on a competitive edge across different materials that's being sold out, that's where actually sustainability comes into our daily lives without knowing about it. I know about that. Okay, if I'm going to utilize it and I'm a very rough user, for me it makes sense to have a 35% more stronger material, right? And then I don't look it from a perspective of just being environmental friendly. I look it from a basic understanding and attached to the basic form of the material. That's the
A value
USP.
addition for your context.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be in a silo. It has to be put down in the way it works, capitalizing thing. Because that's how if someone wants to partner with you, they also are thinking in terms of scale.
So also, just to share a thought on students, especially who want to, whom we want to motivate to do something about this, about anything. One thing is that we should be interested in everything. Don't do it. It's okay. Or even take your time to get into it, but be open to knowing a lot of other things and speak to other people from different disciplines, because we don't know what's their point of view of the world or anything else. So we get to learn a lot of things. Otherwise, we only replicate what we already know. So this is something that one of the very senior professors had shared. So what we know is like a circle, okay? And what we don't know is the circumference of that circle, okay? So when we know very little, we think we know a lot, okay? We know everything, but when we actually realize that we don't know so much, the circumference also becomes bigger, and we realize we don't know so much. So when we actually don't know things, we think we know a lot. When we know a lot of things, we realize we don't know so many other things. So that is something that our mindset should be. And we have to be good at articulating things and also making decisions, because otherwise if we don't do these things, and of course paperwork, that's very important. If we don't do these things, we are always going to remain a white collar labor. The decision making won't be in our control, and if that is not in our control, how much ever we make, it may not create so much of impact. And we also need to think at a systems level rather than just a product. So that's why even now, after working on this, I realized that making a material or a product may create impact to some extent, but maybe I need to get into policy making where I'll be able to make even a bigger impact for more number of people. So if I make a product, it will be affordable for some number of people. But if I make a policy, it might be, helpful for a lot more number of people.
True.
Right.
That's something we are also at a personal level exploring, because talking to such passionate people, we also get to learn. Like probably me and Ketu never knew about ceramics this much before this call. So as we know more stuff, we also realize that like a lot of policy level changes has to come to kind of support these initiatives and make it a large scale acceptable solutions.
Right. So, Shashank, I think we had a lot of insights from this talk, but if you have a message for our audience, what would that be?
So one thing is just start at your own scale, whatever is comfortable for you. Like for me, when I actually started working on this project, just doing the primary and secondary research, I started using reusable bags. Before that, I was not using it. And so what we do actually changes us and aligns us to what we want to do. So that's a very, very funny state to be in. But just start with what you want, whether you want to start using reusable bags, you want to start walking or cycling to a comfortable distance where you want to commute. Just start doing that, and slowly you will start getting into it. So yeah, don't wait for something big to do, or for that motivation to hit you. Just take the initiative and start doing it. Second, very sector specific. If you are having anything in cooler, whether chai or anything else, please break it after you use it, because it's not meant for reusability. Uh, so that's one thing. And of course, if it's glazed, please don't do it. Just terracotta, the coolers that we have, because the glazed pieces are actually reusable.
Okay.
Right.
And third, please collaborate and communicate. That's something that you don't know what productive thing or some motivation will come from where, and all of us have different experience in life. So it's just have conversations with strangers.